because Grey Cup memories are so special, but it does tend to be a little depressing. But the CFL has done their best to snap us out of those doldrums as we welcome Justin Dunk of 3DownNation.com, the CFL's #1 insider. And JD, thanks for joining us on short notice today. I haven't had time to delve into this schedule. Arash had teased last night that it's going to be different than most years. So what have you discerned out of it?
Well, it starts with the Grey Cup rematch, which is going to be tasty for people around the league. The one interesting part to me, and I've just glanced over it real quickly to get on with you guys, is that the Riders don't travel to Hamilton to play the Ticats. The Tiger Cats do go to Mosaic Stadium, but those are some of the intricacies within this schedule where they're trying to have more divisional games to lower the amount of travel, obviously with COVID-19 still being around us. Hopefully it's different by the time the season comes around, but that's what jumps out to me.
Still an 18-game schedule? I didn't even look. I haven't had time to look.
Full slate, buddy.
Okay, great. And the other thing, a lot of folks are wondering why there are so many preseason games. What would you answer to that?
Well, to me, it's just a normal schedule, right? There's a couple. So the Riders play the Bombers in Winnipeg, and then they come back to Regina and play them for those games. I think there had been some talk prior to the pandemic about potentially cutting the preseason games down maybe to one. There were some people I know that I talked to that wanted to maybe even add games to the schedule because it's more revenue when you have the regular season games. But to me, it looks like the same amount of preseason games.
That's what I thought. But like I said, I haven't had time. It came in on right when we came on the air. They announced the schedule. And let's not forget, the National Football League had no preseason games in 2020. Now, having said all this, we see people are going nuts with the schedule being released. What's your take on, are they actually going to kick off June 10th? And do you think there'll be fans in the stands or not? What do you know as we sit here today?
The major caveat obviously being COVID-19, but when you look at the landscape, and some people took the story that I wrote at 3DownNation in terms of the league hoping and praying for a vaccine maybe the wrong way. I do think the vaccine developments that we have seen in the news recently are significant, but the league needs to have plans if that vaccine isn't readily available to the citizens without our country in a widespread way. So the league is hopeful to have fans back in the stands, but we don't know where the pandemic's going to have us come the spring. There's a sense that when the CFL looks at what's going on down in the NFL and the NCAA, where depending on the state that you're in, there's a various amount of fans allowed. Some of them actually aren't allowing fans there at all. But to me, that's not taking into account the actual fans. And do they feel comfortable being at the stadium potentially, not knowing what the pandemic's going to look like? To me, that's a major question mark. You can open it up, but how comfortable are fans actually going to be? And what's the process going to be like in terms of screening to get into the stadium? I think we all saw the viral video that went around Twitter and social media where there was just a guy sort of patting somebody down lightly, and that was the COVID-19 screening process in the NFL. It's got to be better than that up here.
Yes, and my take is that they may kick off June 10th. I think this is a good news day today that they've announced the schedule, but I do not think there will be fans. And don't please try to tell me that there will be fans. And I don't think that there will be a vaccine widely distributed enough to have fans. And as you said, even if there is, how many people are going to want to come back? But it's still a good news day. Regarding your take, I got the exact same thing out of Ambrosie's address as you did on Monday, but I didn't get the heat, I guess. Like I said, this is your plan, praying for a vaccine. Now, I did have Randy the next day, and I said, Randy, I was hoping that you would say that we're going to play no matter what, fans or no fans. He says, well, we have all these options, but I wanted to keep it positive. So he explained it a little more to me, but that heat that you got from people doesn't bother you, does it, Justin? I don't think that it does.
Not at all. And I understand where Ambrosie was coming from, but like you were getting at, let us know the plans. It's very easy, I think, to come out and say, look, we have scenario A, B, C, D, and maybe all the way down to Z that we can fall back on. Obviously, plan A would be full stadiums and back to, quote, normal in terms of having fans allowed in the stands. But just let people behind the curtain a little bit. I don't think that's a bad thing. We saw when the NHL was putting their plans together, how that morphed and changed, Roddy. I know you guys were following it closely, and Gary Bettman was open about it because he wanted people to know the process that they were going through. When you don't let the fans, specifically behind the curtain, they start to wonder what's going on there. So that's what I think could have benefited Ambrosie in his address.
Yeah, and that's where I and the CFL differ, and I'll put you on my team if that's okay. I'm with you. I think you need to say a little more of what's going on. They don't feel that they are obligated to. And it's the fans that are paying the freight. And that's why I think that they do deserve a little more than what they've gotten. But what do you think are the chances of them not playing at all? For instance, you brought up the NHL. We're still talking pro sport here, Justin, and we're still talking about this country of Canada. There's a lot to do with health, but it's a lot more to do about money. And you're seeing these NHL insiders are saying, the NHL owners are saying, the worst case scenario that we pegged a couple months ago is actually way worse than we thought. We can't forget that NHL owners are on the hook to lose maybe way more millions than they thought. I mean, I have not spent 2 seconds thinking about their perspective, but the fact is they're actually paying the freight. So what are the chances that they don't play? They just say, hey, this is going to cost too much and we're not going to do it. Is that still a possibility, do you think?
I mean, everything's a possibility, to be honest, at this point, because as you said, the owners are going to have to be willing potentially to pay the freight and lose more money than they may have calculated. And that's part of the reason why the 2020 season was ultimately canceled, is that they felt like at the onset of the pandemic, there was still going to be a chance for a shortened season where they might have some fans be able to come in the stands. But as that went along, and the discussions behind the scenes with the Board of Governors and the presidents and all the owners in there talked about potentially paying out money for a Hub City season where you weren't going to have any fans and take a major financial hit, that just didn't sit well with some of the owners. So that's ultimately why they didn't play. So I think we're going to look at next year. You have to be aware of where you might be and try to project it. But until you're there, you can't say for sure.
Yeah. Well, I would like to think that by announcing a schedule, you are guaranteeing there will be a season, but we still don't have that guarantee. But lastly, overall, Grey Cup Unite week, I got to say bravo to the CFL with the media availabilities. We've heard from players, we've heard from coaches, the all-decade team, Randy's address. This has been a very positive step, I think, this week. That's my take. What's yours?
It really has been. And Roddy, I know you've been all over this as well, saying the CFL likes to go dark. And I felt like there was a period there after the season was canceled where there wasn't much news coming from the league, let's say, because they were going through their future planning and trying to trim the budgets, obviously, in terms of football operations, and then looking at what they were going to do for the future. So I think what Grey Cup Unite Week has shown is that even with the lack of football in 2020, that there is still a want for the content out there, and the league has filled that in a very good way. I mean, we can pick apart Randy Ambrosie's State of the League address, but without it, we're talking about probably Mike Riley's contract situation and focusing on that because there wasn't much coming out of the league. Then you have the head coaches, all of them, in a big media avail, and then the star players come out. Riley wasn't among them, but nonetheless, Bo Levi Mitchell and Cody Fajardo doing their best to unearth some new content and help the league stay in the conversation, especially up in Canada, coast to coast.
All right, Darren Dupont has one for you before we let you go.
No, just really quickly, I just want to hold you to a sim prediction for Grey Cup tomorrow. Ottawa, Saskatchewan.
Boys, what's the spread? We got a point spread on it?
2.5, Ottawa. They've won 8 in a row.
2.5, Ottawa. You guys are in Regina. Give me the Riders, man. I'm going to put it on you guys. I don't think you inputted the Riders team good enough because I think they would have took the 2020 Cup overall. That team was stacked. And I'm talking about the real Grey Cup. So I'll roll with Saskatchewan and Cody Fajardo.
All right.
All right. Sounds good, Justin. I predicted he'll be named the game MVP.
Whoa.
But I love me some Cody Fajardo. Justin, thanks.
Yeah, hopefully the goalpost doesn't get in the way.
Yeah, we'll keep it on 3 Down all weekend. Thank you, my friend.
Appreciate you guys.
CFL's top insider, Justin Dunk, joining us on last second notice here on Flame Tech Football Friday.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.